All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to what I think is going to be a very fun, interesting edition of the Fed League Flash. Today, we are going to oversimplify what the schedule matrix is and how it's made. And when I say an oversimplification, all right, I worked on a fake version. I gotta stress that this is not the schedule that I'm going to be doing today. Okay, the league could care less if I come up with something or not. I'm just using this as an illustration and an example. All right, so anyway, I had to do 3 drafts before I figured it out. And one of the things that made it complicated was the fact that we're dealing with, according to the information we have right now, 13 teams. Now, if you know anything about math, you know that first, obviously, 13 is an odd number, which makes scheduling an even number of games very difficult. Also, 13 is a prime number, which means it can only be divided by itself. So that presents a very interesting challenge. So, my goal as I went to make a fake schedule up was to try and come up with a matrix that is relatively balanced with some considerations coming into play. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it was a challenge. It was a real challenge. I spent a couple hours doing this. So, because I don't have anything better to do, apparently. Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I did not take into account that makes things even more difficult for formulating the actual schedule is checking on ice availability. Hey, Baton Rouge, do you have this date, this date, this date, this date, this date available? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, we go on. I didn't do that. All right. I tried to come up with an idea that is sensitive with travel costs because that is the big key. That's one of the reasons why the schedule was as wonky as it was this last year, is because the league was trying to, again, with an odd number, create a system that was in everyone's best interests. And yes, there were flaws, like you had Mississippi and Baton Rouge playing each other 21 times. Too much. But at the same time, you've got the travel difficulties. So, all right. So I tried to figure out a balanced schedule. Now, this is our grid that we are going to fill in progressively in 5 steps. It's kind of like a Shakespearean tragedy. It starts off really good, and then there's a big letdown at the end. It's kind of like, well, this is okay. It's not the greatest, but we have a conclusion. Yeah, very, very Shakespearean. If you've ever studied any of the great Shakespearean tragedies like Hamlet and whatnot, you know what I mean. A story that takes place in 5 acts, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's the end. All right, that's what we're going to come up with here. Because try as I may, I couldn't come up with something in which I was totally happy with. It's like, well, this works, it's functional, it's not the greatest. Had to make some compromises. So, we're going to do this in steps, and I'm going to be pausing this video here and there as we go through each of the 5 steps to fill in this whole grid so that every team has 56 games and everyone plays, again, a relatively balanced schedule. Nobody's going to see every other team. It's just not conducive to economics with a bus league. Okay, again, this league, everyone goes everywhere by bus. So, yeah, you can't have Danbury playing Baton Rouge 12 times a year. Doesn't work. All right. So I've rambled on with an introduction long enough. We're going to pause this after I explain the first step. The first step, which is already filled in. All right. You see the teams listed here and here in the same order. So the X means it's that team. Obviously, the team's not going to play itself. So the first thing I did was, okay, pair up teams according to rivalry. All right. In the Northeast, we have Danbury and Hudson Valley. Very close rivals, very convenient. So they play each other. I just use 12 as a base. But yeah, you see some 16s, I'll explain. All right. I tried to fill in as many 12s as much as possible with geographical rivals. All right, like Blue Ridge and Carolina. You got Columbus and Athens. Trying to pair them off, and I'm basing off of that, kind of building off of that. So this is our first block. All right, we have our rivalry matches. Everything is done by what's called pod scheduling. That's why I have 3 different colors here. These are your Northeastern teams, the 4 Northeastern teams. These are your Midwest teams, Motor City, Port Huron, Danville, and then all your Southern Division teams. I put them in one block because for the most part, travel is kind of balanced for them. So we have 3 pods to fill in. Now, what makes this difficult is not only the odd number of teams, but these 3 teams in the Midwest, they're kind of isolated. So I had to change the 12s to a 16. As much as I didn't want to do that, it became necessary in order to balance out the schedule. And it helps with the travel. Same with, I wrote 12. These are supposed to be 16, so I'll fix that when I pause. Mississippi and Baton Rouge, because they're kind of by themselves down south. So they're 16, which is better than 21. All right, so let's pause this and start with filling in the divisional pod matches. And you'll see what I mean in just a second here. Okay, so now stage 2 is complete. This is the first time I'm using segmented recordings, so this is what makes it interesting. All right, so we take our Northeastern pod and we schedule a total of 32 games for each team. We have our 12 for our divisional rivalry matchups and 10 against the other teams. Now, we already mentioned the 16s that are necessary in the Midwest for the 3 teams out there. So it's 16, 16. It's 16 all around. All right, fixed our Mississippi and Baton Rouge problem. And I missed something. See, this is not as easy as it looks. All right, so now, in the South, all right, I couldn't go nuts with divisional games or interdivisional games because we have to balance things out with these other pods and interdivisional games. All right, so I had to be very conservative with planning matchups. So here's the first thing that really isn't ideal, but it's a compromise I had to make for the scenario. We lose a lot of rivalry games. For example, the biggest rivalry, of course, Carolina and Columbus. Biggest rivalry in the league, arguably. All right? They're only going to see each other 8 times in this matrix that I am creating because I have to leave room for other matchups to balance everything out. Again, this took me 3 takes, 3 drafts. This is the 3rd draft that you're seeing. All right. So we are to this point. You have your rivalries, 12 each, and then the other Southern Division teams or Continental Division teams 8 times. So this creates 12 plus 16 plus 16. That's 44 games out of the schedule done for all these Southern teams. Here we have 32, and we're going to have to balance this out with a mix of the Northeast and the South. Here we have 32. So already we've got a little disparity. But wait, we get to step 3, which is figuring out the intra-divisional games. Okay, I think it's very important that you see a team that's in your division, that you see all those teams. So step 3 is filling that in, and this is what that looks like. All right. Now, I already did all the intra-divisional games for the South with the 8s. All right. And that pod is done. This pod is done. And now we added our intra-divisional games in the Empire Division. So Binghamton, for example, plays Motor City, Port Huron, and Danville 4 times each. Port Huron plays all 4 of these teams 4 times each. So that balances everything out so far. Now, we still have an uneven number of games when we compare pod to pod. We have 44 games for the Northeastern teams. We have 16, 32, 48 for the Midwest teams. Did I do that right? 16, 32, 48. Yeah, that is correct. And then we have our, what did we say here? Our 44 here. So everything's kind of uneven, and we've got to even it out. We have to get every team to 56. So the next thing is to have our northern teams cross over to the southern teams, the Empire Continental interdivisional battles. So that's step 4. And that looks like this. Still working on it. Hold on. And there you go. Kind of like that guy that's you see on TikTok videos. It's kind of like that, but it's not that simple. All right. So here we are. Now, there's blank spots because you're not playing every other team. In this top line, Danbury is not playing Blue Ridge or Carolina or Mississippi or Baton Rouge. All right. So to this point, we have this filled in. Cross-divisional games. And, I'm using 4, 2 home, 2 away. Again, this is just a hypothetical. It's not real. All right, so we have a couple of teams that are now done and are at 56. All right, we have all our Midwest teams. We have 16 plus 32 plus 8. That is 56. We have 4 of the 6 teams in the Continental that have 56. Blue Ridge, Carolina, Columbus, and Athens. All right, now we have to make some final adjustments because not everybody's a 56. For example, Mississippi and Baton Rouge, 52. Binghamton, 52. Watertown, 52. Actually, all these teams are 52 up in the Northeast. So, final adjustments. Okay, we have the Southern teams are done because now I've added, I know this isn't really practical, but it's a concession I had to make. Mississippi and Watertown were going to play each other, 2 home, 2 away. Binghamton is going to travel to Baton Rouge. That balances them out. So now we have Binghamton's at 56, Watertown's at 56. One last problem. Danbury and Hudson Valley are not at 56, they're at 52. So Had to make up those 4 games. So we changed the 12s between Hudson Valley and Danbury to 16s. Didn't want to have to do it, but I had to do it to balance out the schedule. And voila, everybody's got 56 games. It's relatively balanced. Most teams are seeing 9 of the other teams, or excuse me, 8 of the other teams. Some are seeing 9. And that's as balanced as I can get it. But mathematically, it works. Practically, that's a different story. And again, I did not check into ice availability and all that kind of stuff. So, again, this is just a model. Last thing I got to adjust. So, if this was this hard for me to come up with a model, imagine what the league has to put up with trying to create the schedule matrix for everyone. And then remember, okay, this gets proposed to the Board of Governors. They have to all agree to it and sign off on it before it's, yeah, this is the official schedule. It's a process. It's a long, arduous process. So, especially with an odd number of teams. But you can make the math work. So, anyway, I hope you enjoy this, and I hope this helps explain a little bit about the general concept of the schedule matrix and some forms and methods used to create it. All right, the league has a much more sophisticated system than me on pen and paper figuring it out. All right, but this again gives you an idea. So yeah, again, people, please remember, not real. This is not the schedule. Okay, Sarge, not the schedule. I understand. All right, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea of the process that goes into creating this and how difficult it is. And yeah, there's compromises that have to be made, and nobody's going to be 100% happy with the schedule. It's just not. Like in this, Binghamton traveling to Baton Rouge and vice versa. Really? Probably not in realistic terms. But anyway, so there you go. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it kind of helped explain things a little bit more for you. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, and keep following me here. Tuesday, Facebook Live, we're going to have some very interesting news. It's going to be a very, very interesting news day. So make sure to join me. I'll be somewhere 8 o'clock-ish in the morning. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later.